I think Jalen Williams is a top 25 NBA player, and it's time to start having that conversation amongst people in the league. Where he thrives is in transition, offensively and defensively. What he does so unbelievably well is finish at the rim, pull up in transition. He's one of the best scorers on the run. I don't think there's anybody else in the league who can do what he does as a second option on a team that's unbelievably dominant. Yes, there are people like Jalen Brown who maybe is a better defender and slightly better scorer, but can he do what Jalen Williams does transitionally? I don't think so. Now, what I really want to talk about is the fact that Jalen Williams is one of two players in the NBA playoffs this season who is top 15 in offensive rating and top 15 in defensive rating. The only other player is Cason Wallace off the bench. Jalen Williams is the only starter in the NBA playoffs that has consistently done it on both ends of the floor. SGA, of course, way better. He's the MVP. He's the leader of this team. But without Jalen Williams, I don't know if this Thunder team could make the dominant run that they have. So, let's get into it. Let's start with some Eastern Conference players that I think are probably better or, more advantageous in the league than Jalen Williams is currently. Another thing that makes him so unbelievably good, not necessarily in top 25 rankings, but in terms of promising career, he's only 23 years old. That is what is so important to me. The potential is through the roof. He needs to get better as a shooter. He needs to get better as a dribble drive, penetrate type guy. But in terms of other scoring methods and the defensive end, he does an unbelievable job. So now, let's talk about the Eastern Conference players that I would think are better than Jalen Williams is right now. For starters, with the Boston Celtics, we've got Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I think both of these guys are slightly better scorers. They're better perimeter defensively. I also think the interior defense is a little bit better. Jalen Williams is not as thick as Jaylen Brown or as Jason Tatum is. Tatum, of course, has the size advantage in height as well. I think both of these guys are better two-way players. They could shoot the three a little bit better. Jalen Williams might be a little bit better three-point shooter than Jaylen Brown, but in terms of creating his own shot, I think Brown has got a little bit better of a shot creator bag than Jalen Williams does at this point in his career. So those are two guys that I would consider better. Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns for the Knicks. Karl Anthony Towns, unbelievably underrated center. I think he's a top 3 center in the league. Of course, Jokic takes the crown there, but overall, both of these guys have done more in the playoffs as well as the regular season to prove to me that they're more of a franchise centerpiece player for a team that can contend for a championship than Jalen Williams is. He's a great second option, but Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson could both be number ones on their respective teams. They're together, and they're still unbelievably efficient and good pairing with each other. Defensively, Karl Anthony Towns could get better, but in terms of rebounding and scoring, I do think he's got the leg up on Jalen Williams. Joel Embiid. A lot of people forget about Joel Embiid because he just consistently stays injured. I think he's missed more than 50% of his games since he's entered the league. However, put some respect on his name. He's the MVP from 2 years ago. It's not like we're talking about some guy that won the MVP 6 or 7 years ago. This is a guy who can score 30 points per game, grab at least 10 rebounds, a couple of assists. He shoots the ball well from three for a center. He finishes at the rim extremely efficiently. He's a good enough rim protector, and he's the MVP. So to sit here, I've heard a lot of people argue that Joel Embiid is not a top 15 player in the league anymore. Unbelievably wrong. I understand the injury history behind these statements, but I can't garnish Joel Embiid for being injured. That's not something that I like to take into account for when dismissing somebody from the top 25. Next up, Donovan Mitchell. What he has done in the playoffs for the Cavs, unbelievably great. I do not think Jalen Williams could do that. Donovan Mitchell has been an unbelievable scorer, backpacked this Cavaliers team. I understand they lost to the Pacers in the second round, I believe, but still, you got to put some respect on his name. I mean, he scored 40 points multiple times in the playoffs. We haven't seen Jalen Williams do that yet. Cade Cunningham. Now, this is something that could be argued, I believe, but Cunningham, as the leader of the Pistons, has done far more, in my opinion, than Jalen Williams as the second option. That's where a lot of these players that I rank above Jalen Williams, they've either done it in the past as a number one or they're currently doing it as a number one. If you want to put Jalen Williams in the top 15 players in the league, in my opinion, you've got to give him his own team and see what he can do. That's why I have Cade Cunningham above him. Speaking of that, I've got Tyrese Halliburton. What he's able to, or what he has been able to do in this playoffs, unbelievable. I think that nobody has had a run like the Indiana Pacers have had. Miracle after miracle. The Cavaliers series, the Knicks series, by far and away, one of the most breathtaking playoff runs that I've ever seen. I mean, he dropped a 32-point, 15 assist, 12 rebound, 0 turnover triple-double to beat the Knicks in game 5, I believe. Game 5. Or no, I'm sorry, game 4 to take the series to 3-1. That's correct. A triple-double in game 4 to take the series to 3-1 and basically put the Knicks' hopes out of reach. Halliburton, he's been doing awe-defying things. That's why I have him above Jalen Williams. Another guy, former MVP, Giannis in the East. There's no argument here. I don't even think I have to sit around and discuss why I think Giannis is better than Jalen Williams. Now, another guy that I would put up in the Eastern Conference above Jalen Williams, and this is an underrated pick, Paolo Banchero. I think what Paolo has been doing with Orlando for this season and during the playoffs is things that you really don't see out of Orlando. He averaged nearly 30 points per game, almost beat the Celtics quite a few times, gave them tons of trouble. Now, this is a Celtics team that ended up struggling and lost to the Knicks in, I think, 6. Yeah, that's correct. But still, to take the former champion, last year's champion, to a tough, grueling 5-game series, averaging 30 points per game, and getting it done on the defensive end, I tip my cap to Paolo. I think he has grown into one of the best young players in the league, but nobody talks about him because, once again, he's with Orlando. Now, of course, we have another MVP, this time a 3-time MVP, former NBA champion, Nikola Jokic. No conversation there. I think Jokic, once again, is the best player in basketball. SGA has made an argument for that, but as of right now, I have the man that can average a triple-double as my best player in the league. Next up, Anthony Edwards. Not a lot to say here, but he did get almost swept in the last series versus the Thunder. I think Ant is much better at scoring the basketball. Effectively shooting the 3 is one of the best things that he's done for his young career. He led the NBA in three-pointers this year, which is not something that you would have said a year or 2 years ago. So Anthony Edwards has taken his game to a whole nother level. I think Jalen Williams can do the same, but these guys are pretty much hand in hand in age, and Anthony Edwards to me is far better than Jalen Williams is. Next up, his teammate, SGA. Now we're moving into the Western Conference guys, by the way, but SGA, the MVP. Not a lot to say here. He's a better scorer, a better passer, maybe even a better defender. He does really well in transition, just like Jalen Williams. He basically does everything that Jalen Williams can do, but just a little bit better. And that's why he's the leader of this Thunder team and the guy that I think is going to be the Finals MVP. Next up in the Western Conference, Stephen Curry. Still 38 years old, but Curry is still a top 10 player in the league. The man can average 30 if he wanted to, but what he does better than anybody in the league, and it's talked about over and over and over and over again, is his off-ball movement. Jalen Williams, if he wants to get better at shooting the 3, has got to get better off-ball looks. I think he can do it, but you have to be in unbelievable shape. That's why I've got Curry above him. LeBron, the Los Angeles Lakers. I'm going to go ahead and talk about LeBron and Luka. Extremely efficient passers. LeBron, of course, the GOAT. I still think that if you were in a 7-game series and you gave me the choice between LeBron and Jalen Williams, I would take LeBron. Same thing with Luka. The passing is unreal. The defense really has fallen off the wheels over the last 2 or 3 seasons, but what he can do on the offensive end of the floor is pretty much unmatched by everyone in the league except for SGA and Jokic. Now, moving on in the Western Conference, we've got KD and Devin Booker. Devin Booker is very arguable right now. I think Book is one of the best isolation scorers in the league. He's an underrated passer as well as Kevin Durant. But both of these guys just score the basketball at such an effective rate that I think they outclass Jalen Williams, even though I think Jalen Williams is a better defender. Right now, I think Booker and Williams are pretty close, honestly, in ranking. But for now, I will take D-Book over Jalen Williams. Another guy that's underrated in the Western Conference, and I haven't heard anybody say his name in mainstream media in quite a while. Domantas Sabonis. Put some respect on this guy's name. You want to talk about averaging a triple-double? This guy could do it if he was on the right team. The Sacramento Kings have one of the best players in the NBA. I think he's pretty capable defensively, one of the best rebounders. He's a really good post scorer, unbelievable passer. I mean, outside of Jokic, I can't think of another better passing big man in the league right now than Domantas Sabonis. I mean, once again, this guy could average a triple-double if he wanted to. Now, moving on in the Western Conference, we have another center. That's Alperen Sengun for the Houston Rockets. Not a lot of people would put Jalen Williams below Alperen Sengun, but I'm going to go out on a leg and say that this guy is a baby Jokic. Now, we've heard that term before when talking about Alperen Sengun, but I think that was referring to his potential. I think he's there right now as a rebounder, maybe even as a scorer, but definitely as a passer. I think that Sengun could be the centerpiece of the offense for the Houston Rockets if they wanted to game plan around him. But for now, I have him over Jalen Williams. It's pretty arguable. I put them pretty much at the same level, but I give the nod to Sengun. Anthony Davis is another guy, Dallas Mavericks. What he does on the defensive end in terms of rim protecting is far and away better than what Jalen Williams can do on the perimeter. I think Anthony Davis is still a better scorer, but he is obviously regressing in his career as he gets older, and Jalen Williams is ascending. So we could have that conversation maybe in a year or two. I could definitely see Jalen Williams better than Anthony Davis. Now, the last two guys I want to talk about on this list, Wemby and Kawhi. First up, Wemby. Alien. One of the best young players in the league, obviously. Maybe even one of the best players in the league, period. What he's able to do in terms of rim protecting, shooting, perimeter defense even. I mean, he's not incapable, but in terms of who you would like to have in a 7-game series or to start your franchise with, I think almost everybody in the league would want Victor Wembanyama on their team right now. Now, moving on with Kawhi Leonard, I think Kawhi is now one of the most underrated players in the league. What he's done scoring the basketball and still on the defensive end of the floor is pretty much uncharted territory for a guy with his injury history. That's where I think Kawhi makes him, or that's what I think makes Kawhi so special, is that he's still counted out by almost everybody in the league, but look out for the Clippers next season. I understand that him and James Harden are going to get a couple or maybe a year or two older, but overall, he is still one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. He can score the basketball at an effective, efficient rate, 25 points per game in the playoffs and in the last month of the regular season. If he could stay healthy, this Clippers team is dangerous. Watch out for them. And those are, I think, the 23 players that I have better than Jalen Williams. I put him around the 24 to 25 range. Now, if you wanted to talk to me about maybe he's the 30th best player, I'm not going to give you much argument. And it's because of these guys that I'm talking about that I think he's better than. For starters, Trae Young. Now, Young, of course, is one of the best offensive players in the league, but the defensive liability that he brings to a team is something that Jalen Williams just flat out doesn't do. Trae Young has got to get better on the defensive end. Now, of course, his size is probably the primary limitation behind that, but he cannot be the liability that he is. Pascal Siakam. Now, we've seen him on a generational playoff run right now, and of course, we remember that playoff run with the Toronto Raptors, but I just don't think him in the regular season and consistently in the postseason, he's going to be the player that Jalen Williams has been so far. Next up, a guy who I think is a really capable defender, all defense type player, Bam Adebayo. What really lacks to me in terms of the comparison between Bam and Jalen Williams is Bam doesn't really have an offensive bag. He's a great rebounder. He's a great defender, but I need to see him become in a more effective and efficient scorer with the basketball. He's good at offensive rebounding, putting shots up, getting shots at the rim, but I need to see him become a Joel Embiid type scorer, somebody that can create his own shot even despite his size. That's why I have Jalen Williams over him right now. Moving on into a couple of other guys, James Harden, I think this just has to do with age. He's still a better distributor, maybe even a better isolation scorer. Actually, definitely still a better isolation scorer. But the defensive liability that he brings to the court, that's where I put Jalen Williams over James Harden. Evan Mobley, unbelievably elite defender, great rebounder. This is one of the players that I would really argue that he could be over Jalen Williams. But in terms of scoring, I think Williams is a more effective scorer with the basketball. And that's somebody that you would want on your team, especially considering that the NBA right now is a pace-dominated league. You want to run as fast as possible, and Williams does that better than Mobley. That's why I've got him a little bit over. Next up, Jimmy Butler. This has to do with age. We saw him fizzle out in the playoffs this year. I think that is going to be the narrative going forward. He's just not as dominant as he was. Now, you want to talk about Jimmy Butler that backpacked the team to the finals versus the Denver Nuggets or the Los Angeles Lakers? Yeah, that guy is way better than Jalen Williams. But as of right now, I think Williams is a better player than Jimmy Butler. Franz Wagner is the last player that I want to talk about. This guy is a great scorer, a lot of young potential, but in terms of running in transition offensively and defensively, I don't think he does what Jalen Williams can do. On the defensive end, in the half court, I think Williams is still a better defender. So with that being said, once again, I have Williams somewhere in the 23 to 24-ish spot. I think that he could definitely be one of the better players going into next season, that we could talk about being a top 20 player, but I do think that's kind of his ceiling, especially with his teammate in SGA. You got to take a backseat role to a guy who scores 30 points per game on drives and post-ups. You're not going to get the shots that you need to become a generational top 10 player for the Oklahoma City Thunder, but I don't think that's disrespectful. I think that is such an honor to be the wingman, the Robin to SGA's Batman. I think Jalen Williams is a phenomenal player and somebody that's going to be a star in this league for years and years and years to come. So it's time to start having that conversation. Jalen Williams, top 25 NBA player.